Hey everybody, it's Stu Smith and Jeff Nichols with another Tactical Fitness Report, and we are going remotely with Jeff today in his training facility there in Virginia Beach. Jeff, welcome to another
I
Tactical.
appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, the phone works as good as the computer, so here we
Isn't
are.
it amazing? Yeah, it's technology these days.
Technology.
It's crazy. So what do you have behind you there? Explain your training facility there in Virginia Beach before we get started.
Kind of give you a little, impromptu tour. We got some racks, whatnot.
Yep.
Bunch of other racks. We
Nice.
got some green turf.
Oh, cool.
We got a few other pieces of equipment coming, but other than that, we're ready to fight gravity.
Right. You got a big event coming up, training event coming up?
Yeah, unfortunately for the listeners, unless you've already booked it, it's already full. So November through December, we have a couple groups of guys training here on a daily basis for 6 weeks. So more to follow on that. One of those things that I was thinking, like, if we can do it, at some point we should have our guys, like the guys that I'm training, you're training, we should all meet.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That'd be great. So yeah, that'd be good. So how many guys are you averaging right now through the winter?
Man, right now there were over 30 today.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. But I had it spread out. You know, I have a group running, I have a group doing calisthenics, and I have a group doing like kettlebell stuff. And then we just kind of rotate through. So it's a little manageable when you break them up into different groups. So it's.
Especially now that you're back in the facility too.
Well, we're not in the facility. We're outside.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to go back into the facility until they ask us to go back into facility, because I don't want to be a part of any issues that they have to deal with the new guys coming back in. And
you betcha.
So I want them to be fully prepared for what we are going to bring when we bring 30 people into that facility. So
yeah, you bet.
But right now we're having fun, and I think we may be able to do some fun outdoor training even as it gets colder. Just because, there's a little bit of a gut check to that, that you have to wake up and it's cold, and then you got to get the body warm. So there's some things you have to worry about as far as training, but, there's a mental component to that suck factor that, I think is helpful. Helpful in your training. That doesn't necessarily hurt you as an overtraining gut check would. It's just one of those uncomfortable gut checks.
Yeah. Part of a necessary piece of management, right?
Yeah.
I love it. Cal Dietz said it best. He's like, don't make any mistake. It's like programming is meant to stress you out. Like, that's our goal as coaches. We are trying to stress you out. It's our job to manage that stress.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what we get paid to do, is manage people's stress.
Right. Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. So interesting topic today. I think there's a big cloud of mystery around swimmer-induced pulmonary edema, aka SIPE. You will hear about SIPE at BUDS often, dive school, and in the triathlon world, it's pretty common. But we really don't fully understand what is happening exactly, and why it's so prevalent in some places. In some places, it's not. But Jeff, you've done some research on SIPE before. What have you found that just some good information that people should know when they're going into BUDS type training programs, where they're going to be introduced to a lot of swimming, a lot of waterborne activities, and things like that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the disclaimer is that, especially as colder weather's coming, do not swim open ocean or open lake if it's cold, right? If you've never done it, don't ever swim by yourself. Like, that's a huge thing. Like, that's one. This thing becomes an issue, is that the history is that there's probably the first real case of SIPE that was reported was actually by the Department of Navy. It was in 1981. So you figure there's probably a lot of people that unfortunately drowned from this, not knowing what the hell it was, or experienced symptoms. So the primary symptoms are you'd be out of breath, and you feel like you won't be able to catch your breath. The second most prevalent symptom is it's coughing. The next most prevalent symptom is 56% of people are affected with coughing up blood. So those are the three most common symptoms. That all being said, is like, just understanding kind of what it is probably important. Know this, that of all the actual research I read through the Pulmonary Institute of whatever, I went to a bunch of articles and research papers and tried to get an understanding of really like, why does it happen? Not a single one of those articles expressed exactly conclusively why it happens. They just gave, okay, here are some probably things that will increase your risk factor. So one of them is, oddly enough, got some jets flying over here.
Yeah, got your own air show.
Yeah, right. Oddly enough, this is a weird thing. The most common thing is that people are in shape. Well, that is the case because you don't find sedentary people in wetsuits in open ocean doing swimming or surfing and paddleboarding. So obviously you don't find the sedentary getting SIPE. So that's kind of an interesting fact. But the other ones are like, okay, the largest predetermining factor for SIPE is, from what I could gather, was wetsuits, right? You increase your venous return wearing a wetsuit that has a compression aspect to it. So like in the same way a compression garment is going to bring blood back to the heart without the heart working any harder, because this is why. So think about it when you get into cold water. The first thing that happens when you get into cold water, roughly, is that your body actually tries to send fluid to those areas to offset the cold. So your capillary beds dilate in your body and arms. Well, instantly when that happens, your body goes, I can't compete with this cold ocean. So after a few minutes, what does it do? It sends that water internally to your core, right? To the actual, your body's core, right? And what it does is that you'll start collecting fluid above your heart, which can make you arrhythmic, and then your alveoli. So imagine there's two big sacs of your lungs, microscopic, millions of little bitty sacs that make up your lungs. They're called alveoli. Well, when you send a bunch of water into your internal organs for a long period of time, and you're submerged in cold water wearing a wetsuit, a compressive suit, your body has nowhere else to send that water. So that's the same thing as soon as you get in the water, one of the things we often do is we have to pee. Your body tries to heat that water up, right? So what is it? It goes, well, I'm not going to heat that water up. So what does cold weather? We want to pee right away. We want to pee that water out, okay? So that's one of those weird things too about SIPE, is that one of the predetermining factors is not just wetsuit, cold water, is that you hear a lot in buds is people taking salt tablets, endurolytes, all those, that's also a contributing factor to getting SIPE. Increased sodium and electrolytes is a big one, and also too much hydration. So it's this weird sort of thing where your brain goes, in buds, it's really weird. This contradiction that happens is that the best way for you to keep warm is to drink water constantly through buds, right? And you'll be told that constantly. We're always giving you water in Hell Week. It's like, doesn't make sense, but it totally makes sense because your body's actually heating that water. But what it does is tries to pee it out. So you get in the pool, you get in the water, you want to pee. Yes, absolutely. You should try to actually get the water out of you, because if it doesn't come out of you, it's going to end up potentially going into SIPE. Now, this isn't something that people should be afraid of. This is a very rare thing.
Yes.
You know, it's just that this became an issue to us in conversation because I think that there's some unique situations that are leading to further indications of it, right? So we talked about, you experience, like you said, guys, there's a much hotter summer than normal.
Yep. So they are hydrating and having electrolytes added. Yeah.
Yep. And so then there was a bit of downtime there that probably existed throughout the entire pipeline. I don't know, I'm sure if it was less or more at buds, but if there's a break in training, right, and we increase the work volume after that increase of training, and it's no fault of anyone's else, it's just that the physiology of it is people can detrain unintentionally, and then immediately when buds gets turned back on, they end up back in the water, they're a little bit detrained, right? And then also too, especially if like the swimming is on day 2 usually, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, Mondays is usually the run. So now what you do is after early on in buds is you have a big run on Monday, you have a bunch of inflammation, so you have extra fluid in your periphery, right? So now you get in the water on a Tuesday with sore legs that are swollen with additional fluid you're holding. Now you've just taken endurolytes or salt tablet or something, or you just had a salty breakfast. The research is saying that's really going to increase the chances of SIPE, like up to like 13%. But again, these are, and what I also found in all the research that I read, like the 6 articles plus the pulmonary.org, whatever, was, they're like, well, we don't really know what causes it. We don't really know how to prevent it either, but we just know it happens with this demographic of surfers, triathletes, and military divers and swimmers. So, you know, it's one of those things that I think that, like, when I have Stu take this and go, like, explain some of the things that guys have been encountering, which probably predisposes them for greater SIPE, and then leads on to some other things that guys are experiencing, like Rhabdo and some things.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you know, the problem with it, you know, like you just mentioned, I wasn't aware that, you know, more water and more electrolytes is also an indicator or a predetermining factor. I mean, you have to drink those and you have to eat those, you know, whenever, or, you know, have sodium in your diet whenever you are sweating profusely. I think where a lot of people go wrong is they have a lot of sodium in their diet and a lot of water added to their diet, but they're not
Yep.
sweating profusely. Like if
Yep.
you're sweating profusely and losing water and electrolytes, you definitely need
Not
water.
gonna, yeah. Yep. And you're not going to get SIPE probably either. So, but that's the thing, is like in a wetsuit in an ocean, the likelihood of sweating the early stages of that swim are little, or very little.
Yeah.
On the back end of that swim, I remember sweating and being hot and those sort of things.
Sweat. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when you're not experiencing SIPE, right?
Yeah.
You're not experiencing SIPE when you're able to expel, and keep that workload. And so it's like, I guess the big question is like, well, Jeff, all right, that's great and all, Stu and Jeff, but how do we prevent this? How do we keep this from being, now, this is nowhere did I read this advice. So just keep this in mind. This is my sort of thoughts on physiology, is that if you are purposely hydrating yourself through your preparation and training, wherever you're at right now, you know, before your recruiter, with your recruiter, at Great Lakes, whatever it is, your best option, in my opinion, is to teach your body to work very hard while it's hydrated. What a weird thing is, like, you know, we experience a lot of sporting events where, by and large, people are pretty dehydrated, at least by the end of the event. And that is not at all different probably from the case at Buds, where people, I think a lot of people at the end of Buds, they learn how to stay hydrated. But a lot of people on early set of Buds, they're not able to, they don't know what hydration's like. So if you're good at being hydrated, you're going to be much better at handling the stressors while hydrated.
Oh, that's really a good concept, because I mean, you have to eat at Buds just to help you stay warm, especially during Hell Week. You know, it's one of those things, you're going to eat every 6 hours. You're going to be able to stop and drink a lot of fluids. You should definitely do that, you know, because, and get used to doing that now, especially pre-Buds. Just get used to being able to run with food on your stomach, because you're going to be doing that. You know, you're going to think log PT is over, then you go eat lunch, and then you got another 6 hours of log PT after that on a full stomach.
Yeah.
So, you
get
know,
used to it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so here's the thing that I know a lot of guys might want to say, like, well, Jeff, what about this? Or what about that? And go, okay, well, if I'm dehydrated, I'm hydrated, whatever it may be. I mean, I think that's always good advice, but it sounds like a weird thing. I'm just saying, it's like, what a weird thing that I'm saying you need to be well hydrated and learn to be stressed out while hydrated. So your body, when it learns how to manage stress when it's hydrated, you're teaching it, right? Because people show up at Buds guilty of it and like, oh my God, like they discover this. I've got to eat, I've got to drink, I've got to eat, I've got to drink. They know it, and they see other people doing it. And that's the big takeaway, folks, is that all these training nuances that Stu and I talk about sleep, hydration, meditation, all these things that are outside of the resistance and running and pool world, it is where you can affect yourself the best in training without taking away from your training. Like, we just can't emphasize enough how important it is to manage your state of hydration. And this is why, because the more water you drink, the less water you retain, right? Yeah. So the world's greatest canteen is your stomach. Use it. The water can't help you if it's not in you, okay? So that's one thing you've got to teach yourself to do, is hydrate under stress. Because what's one of the last things that happens when we're stressed out? Appetite is suppressed, and oftentimes thirst is.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that, right? Your body's deciding whether if you're trying to kill it or help it. So you need to be early on showing it that you're hydrating, trying to help it. So when you drink a bunch of water and you jump in the ocean, and it's the first time you've ever experienced 61 degrees, okay? your body is at the very least used to exerting itself with very good hydration. Because if you're dehydrated, I don't know if you would get SIPE. I'm not at all suggesting that's an option. It just makes you wonder, like, there's still probably enough bodily fluid to,
Sure.
Can you hear me too?
Yeah.
There's enough bodily fluid, to keep you warm and whatnot, but I don't know. Because again, no one really exactly can say, well, that person for sure is a risk factor for SIPE and that person is not. You don't really know, unfortunately, until it happens.
Well, it's not unlike the other issues that occur at buds, like a rhabdo type issue. There are people who are more susceptible. If you have more muscle mass than average person, yes, you're probably more susceptible to rhabdo. But it's a combination of your physical ability and the stress that you're putting yourself under. So there's actually a lot of rhabdo cases at Army boot camp, which isn't necessarily strenuous compared to, spec ops selection programs, but there's a lot of rhabdo because there's a lot of sedentary folks going into the Army thinking Army's going to get them in shape to be in the Army. And they experience a lot of rhabdo from it. So I guess rhabdo is really relative to your conditioning, that happens. But what happens at buds is kind of unique because you have these issues where your body may be battling SIPE. Maybe you don't have those big three indicators yet that you have it. Definitely, you're going to be winded. You're going to maybe have some like hacking cough that occurs. Just know that when you are coughing up blood, that's when you should be speaking to a medical professional immediately. But the 1 and 2 are so vague that, it could just be anything. It could just be sinus drainage.
Yeah, of course I'm out of breath, right?
Yeah, of course you're out of breath, and of course you got a cough because you got sinus drainage or whatever. So if you're having those, you may be on that battle with your body, dealing with the water in your body, trying to get it out. You don't quite have SIPE yet, hadn't quite gotten into the lungs and caused, that type of damage yet. But because it's doing all this work on top of a hot summer, on top of more water you're taking in and sweating out and evaporation and all that stuff, now you're adding on high stress, and it's a combination that can add to a pneumonia issue that can then evolve into a heat stroke issue that, because you're just not working, you're pushing through pneumonia basically. And then it goes into a rhabdo. So there's this huge snowball effect that occurs, when you're ignoring some of those initial issues that probably come from one of two things. It's probably coming from you fighting off SIPE or you fighting off being dehydrated. So there's like this big scale that we're dealing with at buds that really has to be almost like a seesaw. It has to be a perfect balance, because if you're playing around one end or the other, something's going to give on that issue, and it could lead to the next layer of that snowball, which could be pneumonia, could be rhabdo, things like that. So it's
it's not, and that's the thing, is like, this is not a scare tactic. That's not why we're doing this. We just want you guys to understand, like, ultimately this comes back to your training. I mean, really, that's what we're talking about. It's like, what does your preparation look like? People that are preparing under the appropriate timeline, like not stressing themselves out, not going in overtrained, like all those real simple things are really unsexy, right? Pick the right timeline, appropriate your programs to your weaknesses, and whatever you say. But it's like, ultimately the answer, in my opinion, is this, okay? In terms of standpoints of, these are the things that we want to experience, things we're talking about. It's like, do I want you to do cold water immersion training? No, I don't. That's what people like. That's what I was going to say before. It's like, well, Jeff, like, if I want to get used to cold water, then I should be taking cold showers, this, that, and the other. No, because if you are a sedentary individual or you are a training individual that is not training, it's just getting cold. What happens is, again, this is from the research side, is that once you get SIPE, you are predisposed to it, just like heat stroke.
Yep.
So That is the reason why you don't play around with fucking cold weather. Like, you don't go hang out on the beach in cold weather and go stand out in the rain and sleep. Like, people do all sorts of stupid shit in my buds class, and not a single one of them made it, right? The guys that were sleeping on the beach or taking cold showers or doing whatever, not a single one of those guys made it, right? Because what you're actually doing is you're training yourself to fail. That's all you're doing. It's like playing a game like this. Imagine a hot poker, a metal hot poker. And the game is who can hold on to it the longest. That's all you're doing. Like, there's no training value to it. There's zero training value. I'm going, I'm just going to make myself get cold all the time, because what you're doing is you're teaching yourself to not perform under cold temperature changes.
Right. That's a good point, because you're not training.
Doing.
Yeah,
you're just like, I'm just going to go hang out on the beach. Like, yeah. Well, yeah, but Jeff, but I'm going to go run around. But you'll never be under the context of buds.
Yeah.
Under medical supervision with a real process that buds is.
Yeah.
Like, you're not recreating it. So the best thing you can do is just train physiology.
Yeah. You know who guys who did really well with, I think, not only handling the cold, but were great in the water, were guys that did surfing on the West Coast. Guys who grew up on the West Coast and did surfing, they were, and put it this way, like I said, Jeff and I aren't trying to have this discussion to scare people and like hope I don't get SIPE and pneumonia and Rhabdo. Look, I never had heat stroke at buds. I never had SIPE. I never had Rhabdo. A majority of your class will be
same.
those things, but you're going to have a guy who's really a good guy that all of a sudden is coughing up blood, and you're like, what the hell just happened to him? How did he do that?
Yeah.
There's no answer. Right. There's no answer like why it happened to him and it didn't happen to you. Right. I don't know that answer anyway. It's just one of those things that you do need to be aware of. And obviously the big indicator, if you're coughing up blood, you need to be talking to medical. You're probably going to be rolled unless you can be healed, because here's what happens is if you let it go, if you let SIPE go and then that turns into pneumonia, you're definitely going to be rolled after pneumonia, maybe even 2 classes if you're lucky. And then if you're still fighting it for a day, you might have one more day that you could go do something. That's probably when Rhabdo is going to kick in, because your body just can't handle all of that stress. So now you're rolled and you have to fight off, or you have to recover from SIPE, heat exhaustion, pneumonia, and Rhabdo. It's almost too much to recover from in a bud situation and then be ready for the next buds class or even the next second away buds class. And
because we're not even talking training, we're talking health at that point.
Yeah. And be able to keep up with the standard. I mean, it's a hard process. I've only heard of a few guys who had Rhabdo who had a class or 2 roll that came back and was able to, to make it through Hell Week or whatever. It doesn't matter when you get it. If you get it post Hell Week, you probably have a lot better chance of coming back into the class. But if you got to redo first phase, that's a butt kicker. And
man, no way.
That's a tough one to. It's a tough one to recover from. I actually wrote an article about it because one of my guys is doing Hell Week right now, because he was rolled a couple of Hell Weeks ago with all of that. He had SIPE, he had pneumonia, he had Rhabdo, and now he's, it just
finally
prompted an article, and I was like, how do you recover from that? And that was a hard one. I mean, he had to really take it easy for a while and just kind of rebuild his cardio function.
Because you can't, because if the thing is like, it's not a matter of like, well, I'm just going to rest a couple of days. No, you had water in your lungs that very likely, potentially could left to scarring. So scarred muscle doesn't contract well. Scarred lung tissue does not transport oxygen well. So you see what's going on. It's like, this is like a severe case that we're trying to just get you to the point. Again, my point is that the best thing to prevent these things, these sort of catastrophic, oh shit, is training, right? Get a good training timeline to prepare for that very difficult course, because no acute bout of training is going to get you to the next level. It's a long process, and I would suggest learning to love that process, or at least respect the process so you can do it properly.
Yeah, be patient with it. How many times have we said that? You got to be patient with it because it is a journey. It takes a while just to get good at the PST. Especially if you're coming from a strength athlete side. I mean, it takes a while to be able to run fast and swim fast and have high repetitions in these calisthenic exercises. Then it takes another layer of training to actually help you prepare for what you're about to endure. From all the load bearing of logs and boats and rucks and longer runs and longer swims. Those are things that you also have to make time in your timeline to prepare for. Otherwise, you're going to get good at getting to buds and not be prepared to get through buds.
Yep.
Like 75% of the people that go to buds anyway, they have done a good job. They've done a good job at getting to buds, but they
missed
never
the second part.
They missed that second phase of tactical fitness there.
they weren't patient enough. Yeah. So again, folks, this is it's something worth looking up. Honestly, as a bud student, I would look up SIPE. It's just all capital SIPE. It's a very simple sort of definition of what it is, where it comes from. But ultimately, again, you'll see that some of the advice that we give is the same advice that those medical professionals are going to give. Right? And this, the one thing that you can control is the training. Can't control the water temperature, can't control the air temperature, can't control the cadre, can't control your buds classmates. You certainly can control your training. So that's what we suggest. Control your training.
Yeah, and believe me, recovering from any one of those elements is hard enough. Recovering from a bout of all of them, because one will trigger the other. Your inability to have proper cardiopulmonary function will cause you to be a heat casualty really quickly, right? Because you're just not able to cool yourself down. So now you have two things that you're now in the future more susceptible to getting. SIPE, and you have a heat casualty issue. Those things stick on you like you're carrying luggage around with you for quite some time.
Like your hair color. It stick on you like your hair color for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, granted, again, we can get around some of these things physiologically if we're training smart. And that's all we're trying to get you guys to do, is understand that the process is a worthy process, buds, or whatever SF selection you're going to go through. It's even a better experience if you show up prepared. Then you really can enjoy it a lot more, right? And it's granted, everyone that graduates to some degree has enjoyed it and likes to be there, but wouldn't it be cool if you show up at first phase or in-doc, wherever they're calling it now, and going I'm here. Let's see what this is. Let's give this a go. Right?
Game time.
Yeah, you bet. So, just hydrate, be smart, be a student, train smart.
Yep. Jeff, hey man, thanks for the additional research you did on this. That was really good. I wrote, like I said, I wrote an article a while back ago on military.com. In fact, it's titled Ask Stu, when to start training again after rhabdo, pneumonia, or heat stroke.
Yep, exactly.
So there's like I said, it's usually a big snowball, and there was some information there's a link to it about SIPE that takes you right to the some of the official studies of SIPE. But yeah, I'll put links in the description below, and of course I'll put links to Jeff's website, which is performancefirstus.com, and mine is StuSmithFitness.com. We are just here doing a tactical fitness report to try to help you guys with your journey. So that's how this works.
It's weird to us that this is a job as well. I get that. This is every day. I woke up this morning and I was like, man, it's weird that this is our job. It's such a blessing, right? Such a weird
absolutely.
Thing. So,
I love
for all of you.
Yeah,
we thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love working out and writing about it. It's fun. And now with Zoom, we can talk about it.
Exactly. So we'll do it again. Keep coming with the questions, good questions, especially the guys that maybe in the pipeline, where this one came from. And we are not trying to be contrary to what NSW is doing. I'm saying, because I'm certain if you or I got SIPE, or any of you listening that's got SIPE, I can tell you there's one place you'd like to be, and that's Bud's Medical.
Hell yeah. Because
that is the one place in this planet that I am certain that they've got like this SIPE thing figured out. Like Stu and I are we're reciting research a little bit and paraphrasing, and it's, you know, all those research products saying there's not a lot of extensive study. I bet you inside of Bud's compound, there's extensive SIPE research that's happened, and they're going to be the best place for that information. So when you show up to Bud's, you're going to have classroom. Probably a good idea. Pay attention.
Yeah.
Right? It could save your life, or actually it's just a good thing to be aware of.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I guess it'd be comparable to Wuhan and COVID.
Yes. Yep, there we are.
They probably know.
Are we still doing this COVID thing? Or
I don't know, man. I've been trying to wish it away.
You bet. Keep trying. Yeah.
All right.
So,
hey, Jeff,
right, we'll do it again.
Thanks as always. Once again, performancefirstus.com. Check out Jeff's stuff. And you got any other things that we spoke about, I'll put links down below to some of those studies too that Jeff was referencing. So
deal.
All right.
All right, folks.
Thank you much.
You bet, Sue.